All right, everyone. Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. I'm Jeff Spiegel tonight, joined by Daniel Starkand again, and a tough one for the Dodgers, a 5-4 loss to the San Francisco Giants, and we'll get into all sorts of stuff here in a moment. As always, we appreciate you guys watching. If you've got thoughts, comments, reflections on the game, if you've got a player of the game or something that stands out to you, please leave that in the comment section for us wherever you're watching, whether you're on Periscope or on Facebook or on YouTube. But Daniel and I were just joking. We can't buy a win. This is back to back. The Dodgers don't lose very many games, and yet somehow we have found the two games in which they lose. They lost to the
Three, isn't it?
three. Well, no, did they lose to the Astros that game? No, they beat the Astros. Didn't we do the post
Did
game
we
with the
do one
Astros?
after the Astros? I thought it might have been against the Diamondbacks. I thought last weekend.
We did
I don't know.
definitely our last one.
Either way, the Dodgers are winless when we do these live shows. So hopefully next time that will
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, we figured we'll get a Kershaw start in. We should be all right.
Yeah.
But I think, and to me, Daniel, again, if you're just joining us, leave a comment on YouTube or on Facebook. Tweet us at DodgerBlue1958, or you've got our Twitter accounts here with your comments or your questions. We'd love to get to those on the show tonight. But I think, the first thing that jumps out to me, the headline to me, is Clayton Kershaw. The Dodgers were probably expecting a little bit more than what they actually got from Clayton Kershaw. Just at the very top, Daniel, for you, what was your overall reaction to Kershaw's performance tonight?
Yeah, it was kind of a complete 180 from his last start. I remember we did our show Monday, the day after he started, and one of my three takeaways was how great he looked, and his velo was up. He was, missing bats, and then tonight, not so much. He was burned by the home run ball. I think he gave up three solo homers, and 4 runs total against a Giants lineup that let's not, mince words about it. They're not very good. So I came in expecting him to build off that last outing, and he wasn't really able to do that. He did work his pitch count a little bit. He got up to 85 pitches, which is, I guess, good moving forward, but it was not your normal Clayton Kershaw tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the headline for me. I was taking some notes even early on. Before the runs started pouring in, tons of hard contact.
Yeah.
And we can get into this a little bit later, but I've got some stats, so we'll circle back to Kershaw there. Of course, the Dodgers do get the benefit of a little bit of luck. They score 4 runs in the inning, thanks to Hunter Pence forgetting how to play baseball. I don't really know. One of the more bizarre things you'll ever see. The guy charge in on a baseball, realize he has no idea where it is, and it lands 35 feet directly behind him. It was beautiful. The Dodgers end up scoring 4 runs. I'd love to hear your thoughts later on whether that's an error or not. They count it as a hit, breaks up the no-hitter. But Justin Turner gets his first home run of the season to cut it to 5-4. It feels like at that point, okay, there's some momentum. The Dodgers have broken through. We're going to get to the Giants bullpen. The Dodger bullpen's been great. And yet, that was a blip. From there was never really a threat. Sure, the Dodgers might have had a base runner on here or there, but it was kind of a mess. Going from Kershaw to the offense, what were your takeaways on the Dodger offense tonight?
Yeah. I don't know what it is about Cueto pitching against the Dodgers, but this is the second time this season that he's looked really good. I don't know if it's the deception of him switching up his windup so often or what it is, but he took a no-hitter into the 6th, and if it wasn't for that ball you just mentioned with Pence, who knows, how long he would have gone. He probably would have been out of that inning without any damage. Instead, the Dodgers were able to put up 4 runs on the Turner homer, and like you said, I thought, they grabbed the momentum right there and they'd come back and score a couple more and get out of there with a win, but just wasn't their night. It was outside of that 6th inning, they did absolutely nothing. They maybe had, a handful of base runners on via walk.
Yeah.
Had 2 hits total on the night, and one of them was that triple, whatever you want to call it, the Pence lost. So
definitely not a triple. Definitely not a triple is what I want to call it.
So definitely a rough night for the offense. It's unfortunate, and I think it's, the offense as a whole hasn't looked great to begin this season. They've definitely had their nights where they've looked good, but I don't think they've put together a complete performance, which is a little frustrating. But at the same time, the fact that they're 10-5 and and they're not even clicking on all cylinders, just tells you, how good they can be eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have one question here from John Ernesto. He asks, this was the other big storyline, I think, about Dodger baseball the last 24 hours or so, which is the status of Corey Seager. Now, Chris Taylor came in, played great defense. He didn't miss a beat defensively. I don't remember Taylor having I know he drew a walk at one point. Let's see, he went 0 for 2 with a walk, so not a whole lot offensively, obviously losing Seeger. But the Dodgers did get some good news on Corey Seager. Everything came back negative. He feels a lot better. He said he felt better last night, felt a lot better today. So not sure how long he's going to be out, but it does seem like positive news on the Corey Seager front at least.
Definitely good to get some positive news. The injury was unfortunate. He's been, as we've talked about on the show plenty of times, he's been killing the ball to start the season. He's been arguably the Dodgers' best player. So, but the injuries have been a kind of a theme for him throughout his career. So when it first happened, you can't help but hold your breath and hope for the best. And luckily, it's nothing serious. He might be back in there tomorrow or Monday. They'll probably give him whatever time he needs. But yeah, hopefully it's nothing serious. He had a back injury in 2017 that made him miss the NLCS against the Cubs, and then he came back for the World Series. But when you got a big 6'4" shortstop, and we've talked about on the show as well about the potential of moving him to third base eventually. I think when you just look at how his pure size and his injury history now, I think it's fair to question how much longer he's going to be playing shortstop.
Yeah, absolutely. Who knows? Like you said, it's just an injury history kind of guy, and it's just brutal because you just see the potential. I mean, whenever he's right, and when the hard part for me is whenever he has these little breaks. Now, hopefully, if it's just a day or two, but like when he's out for even a couple months, it feels like it takes him so long to get things back going. Which is a problem. If it takes you 2 or 3 months to get going and you're only 6 months in between injuries, like you're never going to really get to develop. This felt like things were clicking. So really hopeful there. But let's get back to tonight. And I think, again, we started with this off the top, and I'd like to dive into it, which is Clayton Kershaw. We've got a guy on Facebook who says Kershaw sucks. So clearly not a Dodger fan there is my guess, or heavy on the irony. He's only the greatest pitcher of his generation. And I saw a stat like his ERA in the last 10 years is like half a run better than anybody else in baseball over that time. So anyways, we don't need to defend Kershaw's honor here tonight, but lots of hard contact. And here's kind of the thing that jumped out at me. There were two things. One is the hard contact, and second was the lack of swings and misses that he got. So tonight he only had 9 swinging strikes compared to 17 times that a pitch of his was fouled off and 14 times that his was put into play. So when a guy is swinging at his pitches, out of 40 times, only 9 of those were swings and misses. Now compare that to the last time he played. He had 14 swinging strikes, 13 foul balls, and 14 in play. So that he got through 5 2/3 in that one, 4 1/3 in this one. But last game he only allowed 3 hard hit balls. Again, in a bigger sample size. Tonight he had 9 hard hit balls out of 13 in play. So of the 13 that got put in play, 9 of them were quote unquote hard hit. 2 of which did not qualify for that were still over 90 miles an hour. I believe hard hit might be 95 miles an hour. So he had 2 more above. So 11 out of 13 put into play were 90 mile an hour exit velocities or more. That's a problem. And there were some positive peripherals there. He had 17 of 21 batters he got a first strike on. He did strike out 6 guys. I think there was a lot of deception. There was a lot of watching pitches. But when a guy saw something and swung at it, there wasn't a whole lot. Both times he gave up a home run in the 3rd inning, he had worked it to a 2-strike count. I think the first guy he had an 0-2 count on, and then comes back and gives up a first home run of the year to Austin Slater. So, and I tweeted this out as well. According to ESPN's game score, I don't exactly know how that's calculated. This was Kershaw's worst performance since September of 2018. So there was a lot of scary stuff for me there. The lack of swings and misses and the hard hit balls. Now, to me, I don't look at that. There was a guy on Twitter that was sending me messages saying, hey, maybe he's more hurt than maybe he's hurt again. Maybe that's the problem here. To me, it's like sometimes you just don't have it. This felt like one of those nights. But was there anything that you dug into that you saw from Kershaw that maybe had you a little bit more worried?
Yeah, I'm not going to put too much into one start. We'll see how he looks the next turn out, but I think his command was a bit off today. And when I say that doesn't necessarily mean, he's not throwing strikes and walking a bunch of people. No, he only walked one guy, but but he had a lot of pitches that were missing in the middle of the zone, or pitches that maybe he was going for the corners and kind of were not even close. They were just not competitive pitches.
Yeah.
So I don't think his command was at its best today. His velocity was still not bad. He was throwing 92 for most of the night, so that was definitely a positive to see, because I think that was our biggest positive from his first outing, was that his velocity had ticked up from the last two seasons. So it was good to see he was able to maintain that. But I think it was just an off night. Before I really get too worried or anything, I need to see him make a few starts. This is still only his second start of the season, and that's coming off the IL as well. So he didn't really have a chance to get built up too much. He just kind of went from off the IL to in a big league game, and he looked great against the Diamondbacks. Not so much tonight against the Giants. But we'll see how he looks next time before I really, start to get too worried.
Yeah, and I mean, we had a commenter on Periscope say, does Kershaw still have it? Now, the funny thing is, Kershaw's been in all of our lives for a really long time. The guy's 32 years old. So, I mean, to say, does he have it anymore? It's not like we're talking about, I think we forget that he's only 32 years old. So, yes, his velocity has come down, although it has ticked back up, which I think is significant. If you're going to look at, does he have it anymore? I mean, the biggest thing that you would look at is velocity. If his velocity is actually ticking up and going back 3 years to when he was 29, then we're not, we know we're not worried about the command. We know we're not worried about the stuff. It's just a matter of, how hard can he throw? I mean, of course, maybe his body breaking down would be another thing, but I'm with you. I mean, it's hilarious how quickly the narrative can change on a guy. One start ago, the narrative on Twitter was, this is the best Kershaw since 2016. His velocity is up. He's amazing. He's laughing. He's striking everybody out. It's perfect. And now it's like, does Kershaw still have it? Is Kershaw still hurt? We can't have both. Both of these two starts have happened within a week. So, he can't be washed today and perfect a week ago or healthy a week ago. And now the back injury from 2 weeks ago is back. I mean, we have to choose one there.
Yeah, and I think that just kind of goes to show how high our expectations have become for Clayton Kershaw. I don't know if there's any other pitcher in baseball that if they have one start where they give up 4 runs, that an entire fan base is questioning if that guy still has it, when they're no doubt future Hall of Famer, 3-time Cy Young winner. His accolades speak for themselves. And I think we've seen with him in the past where he has a bad start every now and then he comes out the next time and goes 7 shutout, and it's all right, he's still Clayton Kershaw. So I think the health is the main thing for me. As long as he could stay healthy this season, I think we're potentially going to get the best October Kershaw we've seen, just because of how limited his workload will be compared to a normal season. So yeah, just hopefully he could stay healthy.
Yeah. And I mean, just to put it in perspective, I mentioned Kershaw gave up 9 hard hit balls tonight, which was significantly more. I mean, Gratterall gave up 2, Floro, Baez, and Kelly gave up none between them. So, Gratterall gave up 1 hit, which was a home run. He gave up 1 walk. Floro gave up a hit. Kelly gave up a hit. But, I mean, the bullpen, again, was great. They shut him down. Now, again, this isn't a dominant Giants offense, but it's obviously one that Kershaw had trouble with tonight. So we shouldn't just completely write them off altogether. But it was just a tough night for Kershaw. And I mean, it was one of those things where I was prepared to have this conversation, even if, he had only had 2 earned runs. I mean, even just looking at the beginning of the game, it was like, of the first 4 guys to put balls in play, 3 of them were over 100 miles an hour exit velocity. I mean, it was clear from the first inning that guys were roping the ball. So it was just a matter of time, it felt like. Or, I mean, with Kershaw, you sort of hope, he's one of the only guys that I feel really good about. He might get better in the 3rd inning. Most guys get worse in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. Kershaw's one of those guys that's okay, if we could just survive the first, he survived the first. He survived the second, now low pitch count, but still high exit velocities. And I'm okay, can he just settle in? Can he settle in? And then the 3rd was a mess. And so, unfortunately, I think the stat line was fair. The first 2 innings, he probably got a bit lucky. The 3rd inning just felt fair. And thankfully, the Dodger bullpen was able to hold it together a little bit. Gratterall was a little shaky. But for the most part, things were good there.
Yeah. No, like you said, I agree. He didn't look right from the start tonight. His first inning, he gave up a couple hard hit balls and walked a guy. Got out of the bases loaded jam by getting a ground out, but he didn't look great. And then he came back in the second inning, had a better inning, got quick outs, but like you said, still hard contact. So he still wasn't, locating his pitches where he normally would. And then it finally got to him in the 3rd inning, where he just threw 2 pitches over the middle and both of them ended up leaving the ballpark. Which obviously, when you make mistakes, you hope that doesn't happen. You hope it's a double or a single or something. But I feel like with Kershaw more than other people, his mistakes usually get out.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And I mean, the flip side to all of this, moving on from Kershaw, we're not going to pile on to the guy, but is the Dodger offense. I mean, we can say all of these things, but part of the storyline here has to be the Dodger offense. The Dodgers got 2 hits tonight, and one of them belonged to Kiki Hernandez. And before we go any further, Daniel, I need to know. So, in your mind, Daniel Starkand is the official scorer at Dodger Stadium tonight. Is that a hit or an error?
Look, by official rule, it's a hit because it didn't hit off anyone's glove. It dropped in. So by the official rule of Major League Baseball, it's a hit. Now, on the surface, though, we all know what happened. We all saw what happened. We know he didn't deserve that triple, but that's the way it worked out. Pence lost it in the lights or the twilight or whatever, and Kike, credit to him for hustling and at least ending up on third there.
Yeah.
He could have been dogging it and been on first or second. So credit to him for getting all the way to third. And but yeah, technically it's a hit, but obviously we know that he didn't deserve it.
And you might, I mean, I don't know if you know the answer to this question. My understanding is I was talking to a couple of people tonight is that it's actually technically like there isn't a requirement. There's nothing hard and fast about rules about errors. Now, the standard is, like you said, if the ball does not hit off somebody's glove, then it is assumed to be a hit. But my understanding is that is not like a black and white rule.
Right.
It's not set in stone. I mean, to me, Joe Davis, like, I didn't know that rule, so I learned that rule tonight. Rule in quotations, I think. But Joe Davis is like losing his mind. I'm thinking, Joe, there's no way they're going to give this guy a hit. Like that was a routine fly ball that Hunter Pence. Like, what is an error? What is an error if it's not like a guy completely misplaying a ball? And the thing is so sort of like person to person. Anyways, there's no rules around what is an error. It's so subjective. That's the word I'm looking for to begin with. So the fact that something, I mean, I can't believe it. If I was Cueto, I would lose my mind, not only because I blow the no-hitter, but all 4 of those runs end up being earned because that goes down as a triple.
I've been on the mound for a similar situation where, I had an outfielder lose a routine fly ball in the lights. And I don't know if there's anything more demoralizing, honestly. And especially when you take into account he had a no-hitter going.
Yeah.
That broke up his no-hitter. And then you could see after that he was all out of whack. He walked 2 guys and then gave up the homer and then was yanked. So that kind of ruined his night and his outing. He's in the scorebook, he's 5.2 innings, 4 runs, but he pitched a lot better than that. He did he get the win? Yeah, he still got Yeah, he still gets the win, so at least he has that, but he definitely should not have been pegged with 4 earned runs tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, again, Justin Turner's home run's the only other hit the Dodgers got tonight. So, like, we're not talking about a game where it's like, well, they would have gotten a bunch more. I mean, if he gets out of that inning and they go, I mean, that would have been fascinating because, Kapler wanted to go to the bullpen probably an inning earlier than that. So I wish we could have seen, the only reason Cueto was in is probably because it's 5-0 and Kapler had to give up a little bit of his theories to sort of appease some of the veteran guys on the clubhouse. But what does he do with Cueto? If Cueto comes back into the dugout with 85 pitches through 6 innings, who knows? Especially because he looked a little hurt. But beside the point, that leads to the one positive of this whole thing. Justin Turner gets his first home run. Cueto leaves a hanging breaking ball. Turner bangs it into left field. No doubter. Hershiser jokes right before. Yeah, he rarely gets these right, but he did say, hey, this would be a pretty good time for your first. Couple walks right before. I mean, the Dodgers did a good job of getting base runners. And Turner gets his first. So that felt good. And, if we're going to take a positive out of this, maybe this is a sort of a step in the right direction for Justin Turner. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've seen it in the past with him where it's usually in April where he maybe not starts off slow, but he usually takes him a little while to hit a homer. I think he didn't hit his first homer till like May 8th last year or something like that. But then after he hit that first one, he kind of got rolling and hit like 3 or 4 within the next week. So maybe it'll be a similar case where he got one tonight. Now he could kind of settle in a little bit and get back to being the Justin Turner that we all know, because he hasn't looked much like a lot of the other guys on the team. He hasn't looked all that great to start the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the last thing that I had on my mind, just looking through the Dodger box score tonight. I mean, obviously when the team gets 2 hits, and one of them's highly questionable, nothing's going to look pretty. Now, they did draw 4 walks, so there's a bunch of guys that don't have massive offers all the way across, but Max Muncy has another offer all the way across. A.J. Pollock, who looked like he might have gotten it on the last at-bat of the game, offer all the way across. Mookie Betts, offer all the way across. So now, those 3 guys, Pollock and Betts especially, they've produced. I think Muncy's got a handful of home runs, but he is hitting 169 on the season. So let me run 3 names by you, and these are guys that I just want to get your immediate reaction to. Basically, how worried are you about where we are? The first one I think is probably the easiest to answer, I would think, from my perspective, and that's a guy I just mentioned, Max Muncy. He's hitting 169 on the season. His on-base percentage is a little bit better than that, thankfully, 310, which still isn't good, but, I mean, for a guy hitting 169, that's pretty good. You raise that to 240, and your on-base percentage is at least 380, which is solid. 407 slugging percentage, again, not great, but, I mean, that's on par with some of these other, it's not a whole lot worse than Justin Turner and Jock Peterson's, and it's better than Chris Taylor's and Kiki Hernandez. So, I mean, Max Muncy, any concern for you at this point in the season with Muncy?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you heard on the broadcast what Alana Rizzo said about how he actually had a fractured finger during the exhibition games. He only missed like a couple days, and the team didn't even tell everyone that it was a fracture. But I mean, if you're dealing with a broken finger, that definitely could hamper your swing a little bit, how you grip the bat. So maybe he's still feeling some effects of that. So I'm not going to pile on him too much. But I'd say kind of the guys that are struggling, he might be the most worrisome just because he doesn't have as big of a track record as some of the other guys. He kind of, was a career nobody, if we're being honest. And then the Dodgers picked him up, and all of a sudden he was this all-star, and he's had 2 great seasons, which I definitely don't want to take that away from him. He's been awesome the last 2 seasons. And he still has 4 homers this year, so he's gotten into some. But I don't think his plate discipline has been as good as we've seen from him. So hopefully, he could start seeing the ball better. We saw in that 9th inning when he got out, he took a 1-0 fastball right down the middle. I don't know if he was taken all the way there or what, but that's usually a pitch he could do some damage with. So I'm a little concerned with Muncy just because it's a short 60-game season, and it's not like you have all year to turn around. You only have like another month before the postseason is just around the corner. So I am a little concerned, but at the same time, he could get going at any time. He could hit 2 homers tomorrow for all we know, and then another one the next day, and all of a sudden he's the hottest hitter in baseball. So we'll see if he could turn it around.
Yeah, absolutely. And just looking at some of the post-game quotes that are coming out, for what it's worth, Dave Roberts said Max Muncy is, quote, just a click late with the bat. He doesn't believe that the fractured finger has been much of a factor, but I mean, that just feels like a manager not wanting to make excuses on behalf of a player. I mean,
yeah,
it's hard. He didn't miss a ton of time, so I guess that's one piece of it. But yeah, I mean, and to your point, this was a guy that, remember, in 2017 didn't play a Major League Baseball game. He spent the whole year in the minor leagues, and that's after some time before that where it just didn't work out other places. 2016 with Oakland and stuff like that. And so I think for me, if we're looking at positives, I look at the on-base percentage and I say, I guess it's up to 328. So, I mean, that's not terrible. Or excuse me, it was 328 probably before tonight. But that's not terrible. He has been able to draw 9 walks in just 67 plate appearances. So that feels to me like, to your point, the plate discipline is there. He was fouling a bunch of pitches off in the 9th. But it is, I mean, it's one of those guys. He's put together 2 good seasons, but it's not like he's put together 4 or 5 good seasons, which I think is some of the concern with a lot of the guys on the Dodgers, where there's maybe some, there's reason to be optimistic, but there's just as much reason. When we could talk about a guy like Bellinger too, and I know that's somebody we have talked about. We're not going to talk about him tonight. You and I aren't worried about him, but his highs are higher than Muncy's, but his track record is slightly longer, and he's younger, so we haven't seen him maybe fail, so I think that works in his direction, whereas Muncy has failed at the major league level before. But yeah, I mean, Muncy's an interesting one. To me, the on-base percentage is helpful to me because he's still more productive than a lot of guys, the home runs, as you said. And he's not a high average guy to begin with, but it can't be 160. No. I mean, he's got to get that to 240, 250, something like that. So here's the second guy that I've got a question about, and that's Kiki Hernandez. Kiki Hernandez is worrisome to me, and here's why. He went 4 for 5 on opening night. He was on my fantasy squad for the day. I was very thrilled about it. Since opening night, He's 8 for 42, hitting a .190 with no home runs, 1 double, 11 strikeouts. Now, 8 for 42 includes being credited with a triple tonight. So if we take out the pop fly that turned into a triple, he's hitting
Right.
166 with 1 walk. With 1 walk. I mean, we could get into this is going to lead to a Gavin Lux conversation at some point,
Yeah.
but Kiki Hernandez has me worried.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Kike's, maybe arguably the streakiest hitter on the team. So we've seen him kind of struggle like this before, and then he'll come out of it and get hot, and his numbers kind of normalize a little bit. But he has not been swinging the bat belt well recently. And I think he's also being pushed a little bit. Like, I don't think he's an everyday player, and I think he's kind of been playing every day. So maybe whenever Lux is ready and he gets called up, he could take some of that playing time. And also when Seeger comes back, maybe Taylor gets more time at second base because I think Taylor has looked better at the plate than Kike, I'd say. But I think Kike's a great utility man who could fill in at any position, and play a few times a week. But I don't think he's this everyday guy who should be in the lineup, whether it's a lefty or righty. I think he should mainly be playing against left-handed pitching.
Yeah.
And especially right now when he's struggling, at least, maybe give him some time to get out of that slump before you start putting him in the lineup every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and the thing about Kike too, part of it's probably he's got free agency on his mind. I believe he's a free agent after this season, so he thinks he's playing for a contract. But I think also, I mean, when I am seeing Dodger fans interact, it's almost like people love Kike Hernandez the person so much they have overhyped Kike Hernandez the baseball player. Because since joining the Dodgers in 76 games in 2015, he hit .307 with 7 home runs, a .346 on-base percentage, a .490 slugging percentage. Here is his batting average in 2016, 17, 18, and 19. He hit .190, .215, .256, and .237. He posted an on-base percentage over .310 once, and that was .336, and a slugging percentage over .425 once. That was .470. All those numbers are below for this season. He did have 21 home runs in 2018. He did have 17 home runs in 2019. But, I mean, do you agree? I mean, is that the sense you get? Is Kike Hernandez just a guy that people maybe have a little bit overhyped in their mind as far as what they think of him as a player?
Yeah, I do. And I definitely think Dave Roberts might be doing some of the overhyping too, because he keeps writing his name in the lineup every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but I don't view Kike Hernandez as an everyday player. I think if you put him in the right role, in that utility role, he could play literally any position at an above average level. And I think you have one of the most valuable utility men in the league. But when you have him as a starting second baseman playing every day, hitting sixth or wherever, I think he was down a little bit tonight. But I think that's putting a little bit too much pressure on him, and I think that's trying to turn him into something that he just hasn't proven to be in his career.
Yeah, and I mean, it's worth pointing out, all the numbers I just quoted you, I mean, most of those years are him platooned. So most of those years are not him crushing one side and then being balanced out by the other. Most of those years are he's been so bad against one side of the plate, that it's not like he's killing. Now, last year his splits flipped, which was super bizarre, but he had the big opening day, and you look at his numbers, you're like, hey, he's hitting .258, but it's like, yes, the opening day counts. So, I mean, like, we have to, me saying, hey, he's basically hitting 166 outside of opening day, it's slightly misleading because he's only played, we're talking about like 10 to 12 games here.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's one of these guys that they just keep penciling in, and I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the one thing that makes it so eye-popping is he hasn't even had, a ton of competitive at-bats.
Yeah.
He's not moving runners over. He's not putting the ball in play. He strikes out a lot, doesn't walk a ton, doesn't really seem to get, that hit with runners in scoring position when the team might need one. So, yeah, I think if he gets back to more just playing against left-handed pitching and filling in for guys when they need a break, I think he could still be a very good player. But I don't think he's an everyday guy, especially when you got some lefties on the bench like Edwin Rios, who's just seemingly every time he gets a start, he hits a home run. So I don't know why that guy's not getting more looks when you could put him at first and move Max Muncy to second, and you're not losing a whole lot defensively there. And I think you're gaining a lot offensively that it makes it worthwhile. So I'd like to see Edwin Rios in there more. And even Matt Beatty hasn't really gotten much of a chance this year. He had a pinch hit at bat tonight that wasn't really anything special. I think he grounded out. But I would like to see those guys get some more looks against right-handed pitching because that's what they've been, good in the past.
Well, and hey, you know how I feel about Edwin Rios. We don't need to go down that road. It's my guy. It's my guy. I've been harping for him in the home run derby since summer camp. So I'm with you. I mean, yeah, exactly. As you said, there's not even an argument to be made about positional flexibility because the only position Kike can play that Rios can't is probably second base. I don't know if Kike would play shortstop. It doesn't seem. I mean, he could probably in a pinch, but. But you could move. Muncy can play second. Rios could play first. There's a lot of ways to move guys around. Rios could play the outfield, DH, whatever. So that one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And again, to your point, 11 strikeouts and 1 walk for Kiki Hernandez. I mean, it's like if you can't hit, at least draw walks, like at least see pitches. But he's just non-competitive at bats, which leads to the third guy. And this is the slam dunk of all slam dunks. But can you give me one reason why Austin Barnes plays as much as Austin Barnes plays? I mean, I know the answer is pitch framing, but Austin Barnes is 0 for his last 16. Mm-hmm. He's 2 for 22 on the season. This is another guy who has 2 walks and 9 strikeouts compared to everybody's favorite guy, Will Smith, who's 6 for 26 on the season. He has 2 home runs. He has 8 RBIs. He has 6 walks. He has only 4 strikeouts. He is a good defensive catcher. I mean, I get it if you're giving the guy a rest every once in a while, but this isn't every once in a while. This is like a 60-40 split, which is absolutely insane.
I think it's honestly been 50-50. I don't even know if it's been 60-40. I'd probably take 60-40 at this point. I feel like they've been straight up just switching off every day who's starting at catcher, which, like you said, that makes no sense to me either. I don't know what they're seeing in Austin Barnes that we aren't. I don't know if maybe they wanted, true National League baseball and not go with a DH and have a catcher in the 9 spot who hits like a pitcher. I don't get it. Dave Roberts said recently that Smith is going to gradually get more of the playing time. But I don't know, what they're why that's not happening now.
Yeah.
It's a 60-game season. It's not like we got 162 games here. It's a short season. And if the reason is defensively, let's say the pitchers are more comfortable throwing to Barnes than Smith, then I feel like you would want to get Smith as much time as possible so those pitchers could get comfortable with him because I hope when we get in the postseason, I hope it's not every other game Austin Barnes is starting because that's just giving away out. And I'm not sure if it happened tonight, but in plenty of other games, I feel like he always comes up in like a big situation with like the bases loaded or 2 on and 2 outs or something, and he's just never able to come through. So, yeah, I want to see Will Smith pretty much every day if we're being honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if my quick math here is right, so what did the Dodgers played 15 games? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think Will Smith has started 8 and Austin Barnes has started 7. That's just off the top of my head, looking at box scores. How many at-bats is a guy getting in a game? It's outrageous. I mean, because to your point, again, Austin Barnes, I remember 3 years ago, I was writing articles about how good Austin Barnes was. He had an on-base percentage over 400. It was like, this guy's fantastic. Like, we're set. This guy's going to be good. He's great defensively. And you weren't looking for much. It was just like, okay, can you just have a good on-base percentage? We don't need home runs. We don't need a slugging percentage. Just hit for 260, 270, and draw some walks. And he's been terrible multiple seasons since then. He's awful. And yeah, to your point, I mean, like tonight, he's like, who is the guy who comes up right after Kike triples? Of course, it's Austin Barnes, and he grounds out to shortstop. Now he gets an RBI, which is like the comical part of this whole thing. Somehow Austin Barnes benefits from this whole mess. But I mean, he's 0 for his last 16. And maybe the Dodgers are just like trying to save Will Smith's legs or something for the playoffs because of the condensed schedule. But like my thing is, one, it's not a whole lot more condensed than a normal baseball season. I mean, like they're playing, they get 6 off days in whatever it is, like 10 weeks or 9.5 weeks, basically, which, I mean, maybe you get like 8 or 9 off days normally over that stretch. And Will Smith's a young guy. Like Will Smith can handle getting behind the plate a lot. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, I understand. I take people's word for it that his pitch framing is as good as it is. But my understanding is Will Smith is like maybe not quite as good of Austin Barnes, but he's like 85, 90% of what Austin Barnes is defensively.
Yeah, no. I remember spring training last year, so 2019, Will Smith had not been up to the big leagues yet. He was one of their top prospects. And I remember when I was at spring training covering the team, it was a little media scrum with Andrew Friedman, and Friedman straight up said, "We believe Austin Barnes defensively is a Gold Glove catcher right now." So if he's a Gold Glove catcher and on top of what he does with the bat, which him and Austin Barnes are not comparable with the bat. I'm taking Smith every day of the week. Then I don't see what the issue is. I don't know if obviously we don't know everything. So the pitchers might not be comfortable throwing to Smith, but it's not like Austin Barnes is going to be the start. Be around forever. If you view Smith as your future starter, then I feel like you would want the pitchers thrown to him as much as possible so they could get comfortable,
Yeah, and just to clarify, Will Smith was who Andrew Friedman said is a Gold Glove catcher?
Yes.
Okay. I
No, yeah.
I don't know if I heard that
No,
right.
I didn't mean Barnes, I meant Smith.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would love, maybe people have asked, I'm not digging through all the post-game quotes, but I mean, I know they like him in there, but it's gone from, like, my question is becoming, why is Austin Barnes on the roster? But but we're not even asking that question. We're asking, why is he starting 50% of the games? Like, it's insane for a team like the Dodgers. So anyways, let me ask one last question before we move on to kind of a preview and then we wrap this thing up. I mean, Kiki Hernandez is a mess. Corey Seager missed tonight's game. Is Gavin Lux's time coming this week?
Yeah, I think it very well could be. I mean, I wish we had more video or something to see what these guys are doing at USC, because I have no clue what Gavin looks like right now. If he still looks like he did in summer camp, then I'd be saying no. But if he looked like the Gavin Lux of last year, then absolutely they should be calling him up. But I think they'll get him up here eventually. It's almost at that time where maybe two more bad games from Kike and you're going to start hearing people, asking where's Lux at. So I think it's been, almost 2 weeks now since the season started. So that's basically been 2 more weeks of spring training for Lux, for where he's probably getting, as many at-bats as possible down there every day, probably 10, 20 at-bats a day even, who knows. So hopefully he's close, because we know how high his ceiling is, and we've seen what he's capable of. So he didn't look right in summer camp, but maybe an extra couple weeks of getting ready to go, and he'll get back to his usual self.
Yeah, and I mean, for all the people that want to be the conspiracy theories, I think those are about to be validated, because Lux probably will get called up, and I believe the number was if he was on the roster for less than 51 or 53 days of the season, and then there was some question about does it have to be more than 20 because of option, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we're what? The Dodgers have had 2 off days, I believe, so we're 16 or 17 days into the season, which means we're right at around the 50 mark. But yeah, to your point, it is fascinating, because in a normal season, you would look and it'd be like, oh yeah, Gavin Lux is hitting 480 with 8 home runs in AAA in 15 games. But now it's just all we have is Dave Roberts last week saying he's not there yet. So we just have to take his word for it, which is such a fascinating thing. And again, if you think the Dodgers are screwing Gavin Lux over, that is just pouring gasoline on that fire.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, it will be. I mean, if Corey Seager is going to miss even a few more games, I think some of these numbers, the Dodgers, they're in second place in the division. The Rockies are on fire. I don't think either of us are. The Dodgers are a game or 2 games behind the Rockies, I believe. So it's not like the Rockies are pulling away. The Dodgers are fine, but I mean, if Kike's hitting like this, if Seager's going to miss some time, yes, we'd both love to see Rios be the guy who gets in. And part of it is, who gets sent down? Now, maybe that's Corey Seager to the injured list. Maybe that's what it would require, which it doesn't, again, it doesn't sound like that's what's going to happen here. But definitely something to watch, because I think, I joked at the beginning of the season, I said, hey, if Chris Taylor and Kike are both smashing the ball, then this isn't going to become a talking point. Well, guess what? Tonight, Corey Seager wasn't available. Chris Taylor is smashing the ball, but Kiki Hernandez has been brutal. And so definitely something to watch. So let's close the show on this. Let's look ahead to tomorrow night. Oh, man, I was trying to pull up the probable pitchers, but they're not loading right now. So Dodgers plays the Giants one more time. I'm guessing we don't have any clue who the Giants are pitching tomorrow night. For the Dodgers, is it?
It's Buehler versus Gossman.
Okay, there you go. Buehler versus Gossman. What are you looking for, on that? Obviously for Buehler, we're probably just looking for some positive signs, maybe a reverse of what we got from Kershaw, see more of Kershaw's first start out of Buehler and his second start kind of deal.
Definitely. I want the main thing I'm looking is at Walker Buehler. He hasn't looked great to start this year. We've talked about it. But he's still kind of in spring training mode. This is going to be his third start now, so he should be, as far as pitch count wise, probably built up to around 100 pitches. So I want to see, Walker Buehler being Walker Buehler. It's not a great Giants lineup here. He's certainly capable of going out and dominating them. So I want to see it. I want to see him missing bats the way we've seen in the past. I want to see him commanding the strike zone. And I think the hits will come. I feel like with this team, usually when they have a quiet night offensively, they come out the next day and put up a bunch of runs. And it's not like Gossman's some all-world pitcher. He's only pitched once or twice this season, but he's got a 5.06 ERA. So he's been getting hit a little bit, and that's kind of been how he's been his whole career. So I think they'll score runs. So I'm looking forward to seeing Walker Buehler.
Kevin Gossman is not an all-world pitcher. I think belongs in the understatement of the night category. I mean, he is whatever the opposite of the all-world pitcher is. But yeah. I mean, so Peyton comments, one thing I'm looking for tomorrow night is for Austin Barnes not to be in the lineup. Well, Peyton, Daniel and I both agree with you there. I don't whoever is on the mound.
Yeah, well, and based on the trend of every other day, we definitely should get Smith tomorrow.
Yeah, so I guess Barnes has been lined up with Kershaw. It seems like maybe some of the other pitching sort of pairings are less defined. But I mean, definitely. Even Kershaw, he was getting no run support tonight, so he has to hate, throwing and then being like, really, like Austin Barnes is up with the bases loaded. So I mean, at some point that has to become a Dave Roberts decision there. But yeah, I mean. Go ahead. Sorry
to cut you off. I think Kershaw would probably rather hit for himself and let them DH for Austin Barnes if he's going to be behind the plate.
Absolutely. He's like, let's make a deal there. But yeah, I mean that's one other thing that struck me is like the Dodgers go from just they crush pitching of every team they face except for the Giants. I mean, it doesn't make sense. And I get like you could make the argument, hey, Cueto is bizarre. And he's got his herky-jerky delivery, and he's speeding things up, and he's slowing things down. And then you get the guy Rogers, who's like throwing submarine pitches up there. That guy Gott was actually nasty. I mean, whatever his breaking ball was throwing was just filthy.
Nasty.
So, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of that, but like there's so much of it. I mean, there was one at bat early in the game, maybe Bellinger's second at bat. It was like a 92-mile-an-hour fastball from Cueto right down the middle of the plate, and he fouled it off. Or even in the ninth inning, it was like Bellinger just missed it. Pollock just missed it. All these guys just missing pitches that I just don't feel like happens against any team except for the Giants. So I'm hopeful that they can break that with Gossman. Obviously, they have had games against the Giants where they've scored plenty of runs, but there is something bizarre about the Giants where it's like they're in their head that they can't hit these guys or something.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's, just the rivalry and seeing that orange color on the other side of the field. But I feel like these two teams, no matter who's good and who's bad, they always find a way to play close games. So it's unfortunate because they should be going out and killing the Giants, every time out. But if they go out and win tomorrow, they're taking 2 out of 3, and they're still in really good shape. Other than splitting the first series with the Giants, they've won every series they've played this year. They showed the Padres, who still it kind of owns the division. The Padres are the young, hip, up-and-coming team. So it was good to take 2 out of 3 from them, and we'll be okay. They come back to town this week, 4-game series, so that should be another fun one.
Yeah, and Dustin on Periscope points out the batting averages of the Dodgers are not good, no 300 hitters. I mean, that's one thing if you've been following Major League Baseball as a whole, all of Major League Baseball. Joe Davis, I think a week ago, said like the league batting average was like 220, something like that. So, I mean, obviously we are expecting more from the Dodgers, more from guys like Muncy and Bellinger, Turner, etc. Even Mookie Betts has turned it on a little bit, Jock Peterson. But yeah, but to your point, so on one hand, the Dodgers are kind of probably on par with a lot. There's talk about are the balls dejuiced, etc. But the Dodgers averages are down. Eric makes a good comment on Periscope too. He goes, "These games are the World Series for the Giants this year," which is probably it's probably true to some degree. I mean, Kapler especially. A lot of those guys probably are brand new. So obviously Pablo probably hates the Dodgers. Crawford, Longoria, some guys who have been around Pence for a couple years, Cueto. But a lot of those guys, I mean, who knows? But yeah, this is what the Giants are playing for, whereas maybe the Dodgers look ahead and say, I mean, really? Like, we're facing Kevin Gossman tomorrow night? Like, do we really need to put in a full shift in the batting cage? So who knows? Well, let me get you out of here with this, Daniel. Give me a prediction for tomorrow night. Buehler on the hill for the Dodgers. How's he going to look? And give me a final score.
I'll go. I think Buehler's going to look really good. I think he's going to have, his first really good start of the season. I think he'll get through 6 innings. Maybe give up 1 or 2 runs, strike out 8 or 9. I want to see a big strikeout night from him. That would be pretty cool. And I think the offense is going to break out a little bit. So I'll go 7-2 final score, and we're getting out of there winning 2 out of 3.
Okay. Yeah, I think I mean, man, I really hope we're not doing a live show tomorrow night. So that means that's good news. So if you're a betting man, bet on the team total over, bet on the Dodgers money line. But yeah, I mean, the Dodger bullpen has been lights out against the Giants. I mean, all season. They've struggled maybe in a couple games elsewhere, but they've been great against the Giants. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you. Maybe like 6-1 for me. Maybe 6-1. I think they're going to get to Gossman. I think some of these guys are just itching to get off, and I just don't think they're going to miss like they did today. So I'll go 6-1 Dodgers. I think Buehler gets 5. I think he's 85% of himself, maybe 5 or 6 strikeouts. I don't think he's going to be. It'd be hard for me to go from kind of 0 to 60, just because of where he's been. But I do think, I mean, this guy's going to get it dialed up sooner rather than later. And it is the Giants, and that lineup still isn't any good, despite what Yaz's wins above replacement is at the moment. So both of us have the Dodgers beating the Giants tomorrow night, and then we got the Padres, and then we got the Angels, and some fun stuff coming up. So any parting thoughts from you, Daniel, as we send this one into the night?
Real quick about that 300 hitter comment. I believe Corey Seeger is batting above 300, so we do have one guy. He wasn't in there tonight, but we do have one guy.
There you go.
But yeah, tough loss tonight, but we get to play another one tomorrow. That's the beauty of baseball.
Shout out to Dustin, who allowed Daniel to give a Corey Seager shout out. At some point in the show tonight, he worked his way in. It took 47 minutes and 22 seconds, but we got a Corey Seager shout out out of Daniel. So that's the thing. We'll see whether I can get an Edwin Rio shout out or you can get a Seager. Who gets to it first? But we appreciate all you guys watching. I know tonight's game wasn't the best. The Dodgers lose again 5-4 to the San Francisco Giants, but they're back tomorrow. As always, check out DodgerBlue.com. We'll have some great post-game reactions, videos, interviews, as well as a write-up from the game, and some game preview stuff for tomorrow. So check that out. But as always, we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.